Shavua Tov. Good evening. How's everybody doing? Fantastic to be learning with you. Starting off the week right. Let's light up the darkness. Apropos everything that is going on, and we keep praying that everyone will be safe, that the captives will be freed, that the wounded will be healed, that the grieving will be comforted. So this was Shabbos Bereshis, where we read the first Torah portion of the year, Bereshit, the beginning of the Bible. And before we even start, right, within the beginning of God's creating, right, and it is not in the beginning God created. That is an inappropriate, mistaken translation. Bereshis means at the beginning of God's creation, meaning at the beginning of God creating, when the earth was astonishingly void, etc. But if you read the note, and here I'm using the stone Humish. So this is the art scroll, 5 books of the Torah with lots of commentary. And of course, the primary commentary is always Rashi, and then there's footnotes both on the Torah itself and on Rashi. So the art scroll begins like this. Look how amazingly appropriate this is. We begin the study of the Torah with the realization that the Torah is not a history book, but rather it is the charter of man, by which they mean human, right? Humankind's mission in the universe. Thus, in his very first comment, Rashi cites Rav Yitzchak from the Gemara, who says that since the Torah is primarily a book of laws, it should have begun with the commandment of the new moon, right? Which is Rosh Chodesh. This shall be the first of months to you. Why? Because that was the first commandment given to the Jewish people as a nation. And amazingly, we're in Rosh Chodesh right now, the beginning of the new month of Mar Heshvan. So that, if it was a law book, if it was just a law book, it would have started with, this is the first commandment that applies to all of you, the Jewish nation. So Rav Yitzchak explains, or Rashi explains, citing Rav Yitzchak, he explains that the reason for the Torah's narrative of creation, right, the whole book of Genesis, and then the history of the Jewish people leading up to the Exodus in book 2. But why do we start with the creation, right? If it's a story of the Jewish people and the laws that apply to them, why are we going all the way back to the creation of the universe? So he explains that the reason for the Torah's narrative of creation is to establish that God is the sovereign of the universe. Psalm 111, verse 6, he declared to his people the power of his works in order to give them the heritage of the nations. And what does this mean? If the nations accuse Israel of banditry for seizing the lands of the 7 nations of Canaan, Israel can respond, quote, the entire universe belongs to God. He created it, and he granted it to whomever he deemed fit. It was his desire to give it to them, and then it was his desire to take it from them and give it to us. So, put modern history aside. Why does the nation of Israel, the children of Israel, the descendants of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, why do we have the land of Israel? Why did we merit to enter the promised land led by Joshua and live through a period of being ruled by the judges and eventually have Saul and David and Solomon and the reign of kings and have sovereignty in the Holy Land of Israel for 1,000 years? Because God gave us the land. Right, that is the reason. I mean, our deed, right, of ownership is the Bible. Now, not everybody holds by the Bible, but if you hold by the Bible, that is why Israel was given that land. Now, it's a very small piece of land. If you look at all the land surrounding it, which are occupied primarily by people of other religions, it's a massive landmass. But if Jews want to understand what their charter is for living in Israel, it's the Bible. So therefore, if we're going to rely on the Bible as Jews, for saying this is why we're entitled to live there, then we really have to make an effort to live by the laws that obligate us as Jews. Thank God we're all studying Torah together here at the beginning of a new week. Who's in the house? Who's in the house? Sharon in New Jersey, Paul in the Great Northwest, Bella in Florida, Ryan in Jacksonville, Bill in Mid-Missouri, Melissa, it skipped on me, Melissa in Great Neck, David in Indiana, Mickey's in the house, Tom says Shavua Tov, Paula says Amen, and Aoife in the house from Florida, and Spencer in Connecticut. Welcome, everybody. So we picked this up at I don't know how far down, on page 59b, about halfway down the page on 59b. We're just continuing our discussion of Mishnah number 1 here in chapter 3. What happens if a man sends someone to betroth a woman for him, and that guy betroths the woman while he's on the mission, supposedly? Nice friend, but the betrothal is a betrothal, even though we might say that the friend who was sent to betroth the woman for the first man was a bit of a scoundrel. The Mishnah also says, and this is where we pick up our discussion, that if a man betroths a woman and stipulates that the betrothal will take effect in 30 days' time, and another man betroths her within that period, she is betrothed to the second man. So Rav says she is betrothed to the second man forever, i.e. the betrothal is fully effective. Shmuel says she is betrothed to the second man until the 30 days pass. After the 30 days have passed, the betrothal of the second man lapses, and the earlier betrothal of the first man is completed. The law is not like Shmuel, the law is like Rav in this case. And like in most cases, Rav Chisda sat in debates between Rav and Shmuel. Rav Chisda sat and found this difficult. By what means is the betrothal of the second man abrogated? So we're discussing Shmuel's minority opinion here. When the second betrothal took effect, the first betrothal was not yet in effect. It was part of a condition. The condition had not yet been met. So why then is the second betrothal abrogated? And Rav Yosef said to him, the master teaches this dispute with regard to the first clause of the Mishnah, and therefore he finds it difficult. Whereas Rav Yehuda teaches it with regard to the latter clause of the Mishnah, and consequently, he does not find it difficult. So the Gemara explains. Rav Yehuda's version of the dispute is like this. The Mishnah teaches that if the first man says to her, you are hereby betrothed to me from now and after 30 days, and another man betrothed her within those 30 days, there is uncertainty whether she is betrothed or whether she is not betrothed. Rav says this means that there is uncertainty whether she is betrothed or whether she is not betrothed forever, and her only option is to receive a get, a bill of divorce, from both men. And Shmuel says there is uncertainty whether she is betrothed or whether she is not betrothed only until the 30 days have elapsed. Whereas after 30 days, the betrothal of the second man is abrogated and the betrothal of the first man is reinstated or completed. So the Gemara explains their respective opinions. Rav is uncertain what the first man meant. Right? So many of the problems that we encounter in the Gemara, and especially here, are because a man tried to create a betrothal and he spoke ambiguously. He didn't use correct language for creating a condition or creating a delay. He spoke ambiguously, and we're trying to decipher what happened based on what he said. In the real world, to avoid these kinds of ambiguous circumstances that create tremendous problems, people speak very clearly in front of witnesses, and everybody knows where they stand. But cases like that don't make interesting legal discussions, so we focus on the more difficult, nuanced, liminal cases. So right? Rav is uncertain what the first man meant. Is it a condition? I.e., the man is saying, if I do not change my mind within 30 days, you are betrothed to me from now. Or is it a retraction? That is, he said, be betrothed to me from now. And then he immediately retracted and said, no, be betrothed to me in 30 days, right? Saying both, be betrothed to me from now and in 30 days, that's what doesn't make sense. You could say, be betrothed to me, and if she accepts, they're betrothed immediately. You could say, be betrothed to me in 30 days. Okay, then they'll be betrothed in 30 days if she accepts. But because he used the language of both of those situations together, that's what creates uncertainty. Now, it is obvious to Shmuel that it is not ambiguous, but rather that what the man meant is a condition. Right? Be betrothed to me in 30 days. Consequently, the uncertainty whether or not she is betrothed to the second man applies during the 30-day period for Shmuel, as the first man might yet change his mind. After the completion of 30 days, the betrothal from the first man retroactively takes effect because he hasn't come back and said, I cancel the betrothal. So once the 30 days have elapsed, the betrothal is solid because she consented to it. This is according to Shmuel. The Gemara comments, and Rav and Shmuel disagree in the dispute between these earlier rabbis, the Tanaim, the rabbis of the Mishna. As it is taught in a Baraisa, if one says to his wife upon giving her a bill of divorce that it should take effect from today and after my death, similarly uncertain language, right? There would be uncertainty whether it is a valid get or whether it is not a valid get. This is the statement of the rabbis. The rabbis are uncertain whether this man meant that the bill of divorce should take effect retroactively from this moment, in which case it is valid. You can say, this is your get from now if I die, right? So what he's saying, and when you would do this is when you go to war, right? And you're not, and it's a possibility that you're not going to come back and that your body might not be found. There might not be a witness to say that you are dead. Or you can even say, this is your get from now if I do not return in 12 months, right? That would be very good. That's what's often done in that kind of situation. And so if he doesn't come back or retract the get, then after the 12 months elapses, she is divorced from the time that he gave her the get, retroactively valid to that moment. And the value of this is that if he doesn't come back, or even if it's ascertained that he's dead, once you're dead, you can't have a divorce that kicks in after you die because the woman is already a widow when the husband dies. By having a retroactively effective get, that once the condition is met, it is retroactively effective from the moment he gives her the get. Then, for example, she's divorced from that moment, and she wouldn't be a candidate for chalitza with his brother or any of the complications, that yibum would entail, as we've discussed, when a man dies childless and leaves a widow and a brother. Okay. Right. So the rabbis are uncertain whether this man who said, "Here's your get from today and after my death." The rabbis are uncertain whether he meant that the get should be effective retroactively from that moment, in which case it is valid, or whether he changed his mind and meant for it to take effect only after his death, which would mean that it is not a valid bill of divorce, right? It's like they're saying maybe what the guy was saying is, well, here's your get, which means we're divorced. And he says, and from after I die. Well, then it's not a valid get. Right? Because it's like he took back the idea of divorcing her right now, and he said it'll be your get if I die, but you can't give a get that's conditional upon your death because at that point she becomes a widow. Rebbe says a document like this is a valid bill of divorce, and the husband meant his statement as a condition that the bill of divorce should, after his death, take effect retroactively from now, and that's what would make it valid. The Gemara asks, and let Rav, instead of explaining his own opinion, say that the law is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis in their dispute with Rebbe. And let Shmuel say that the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rebbe. And the Gemara answers, it is necessary for Rav and Shmuel to state their disagreement explicitly, meaning it's not the same disagreement as Rebbe had with the rabbis, Because had Rav merely said that the law is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, I would say there, in the case of a get, when he comes to distance her from himself, one can say that he has changed his mind with regard to the divorce. But here, in the case of betrothal, when he comes to draw her near to himself, you might say that Rav concedes to Shmuel that it is certainly a condition, as he wants to betroth her as soon as possible. And conversely, had Shmuel said only the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rebbe, I would say it is in that case there that Rebbe said it was a valid get, as there is no get after death, and therefore it is unlikely that he changed his mind and attempted to give her a get that will take effect only after the death of the husband, meaning it's meaningless. But here, in the case of betrothal after 30 days, he might well have intended to retract the betrothal, so you might say that Shmuel would concede to Rav. Consequently, it was necessary to state the dispute between Rav and Shmuel concerning betrothal in explicit terms, because it's not really the same as a dispute between Rebbe and the rabbis. Abaye said, and according to the reasoning of Rav, if one man came and said the following ambiguous statement to her, you are hereby betrothed to me from now and after 30 days. And then another man came during these 30 days and said to her, you are hereby betrothed to me from now and after 20 days. And another man came and said to her, you are hereby betrothed to me from now and after 10 days. So she requires a get, a bill of divorce, from the first man and the last man. And she does not require a get from the middle one. Why is that? Abaye explains. Now we're on 60a. This is the law, whichever way you look at the case. If this expression is a condition that she should be betrothed from now, if he does not retract within 30 days, so then the betrothal of the first man is a betrothal, whereas the betrothals of those other men are not betrothals. If it is a retraction, right, he said, you're betrothed to me now? No. You're betrothed to me in 30 days. So if that language means he retracted and said it'll happen in 30 days, creating that condition, meaning in 30 days, if I don't change my mind before then. So if it is a retraction, i.e. after saying from now, he changed his mind and delayed the moment of betrothal, then only that betrothal of the last one is a betrothal, whereas the betrothals of these first two men are not betrothals, as they both postponed their betrothals to a later date. Either way, the betrothal of the middleman is of no consequence. So the Gemara asks, it is obvious that this is the case. What is the novelty of Abaye's statement? And the Gemara answers, lest you say that this formulation means a condition and also means a retraction, and therefore she should require a bill of divorce from each and every one of them, including the middleman, due to the uncertainty. It is possible the first man retracted while the second one imposed a condition, in which case only the betrothal of the second man takes effect. Abaye therefore teaches us that according to the opinion of Rav, the uncertainty concerns the meaning of this expression itself, and there is no uncertainty with regard to the intention of each individual person who says this formula. Consequently, there is no possibility that this woman is betrothed to the middleman. Ula says that Rabbi Yochanan says, even if 100 men betroth her in this manner, their betrothal is effective with regard to her, presumably meaning that all of them have to give her a get. And similarly, Rabbi Asi says that Rabbi Yochanan says even the betrothal of 100 men is effective with regard to her. Rav Misharsha, the son of Rav Ami, said to Rabbi Asi, I will explain to you the reason of Rabbi Yochanan. These 100 men have rendered themselves like a row of bricks, each and every one of whom leaves a gap for the other, since there is a period of time before the betrothal of each man takes effect, another betrothal can intervene in the meantime. Rav Chanina raises an objection to this ruling from a Baraisa. If one says to his wife, this is your bill of divorce from today and after my death, ambiguous, poor language to use, there is uncertainty whether it is a valid get or whether it is not a valid get, and therefore if he dies, she performs chalitza, but does not perform yibum. But if he had said, this is your divorce from now, if I die, that's the valid language, and if he dies, the divorce would have taken effect retroactively before his death, to this point now when he gave her the get, Therefore, if he left no children and he left a brother as well as this widow, yibum would be off the table. There would be no yibum because she was divorced before he died. Now that we've created an uncertain divorce, we're not sure if she was divorced or not because his language in giving her the get was ambiguous. It's possible that she was divorced, and it's possible that she became a widow. Since we're not sure, they have to perform chalitza to make sure that she is free of her yibum obligation to the surviving brother, so she can go marry whoever she wants. But we don't allow them to perform yibum because it's possible that she was already divorced, and you cannot marry your brother's brother after your brother dies unless it's a yibum situation. In other words, if a man had kids and then he died, and his widow fell in love, with her brother-in-law and wanted to marry him, sorry, you can't do that. It's prohibited. Now, Rav Hanina explains Rav Hanina's objection. Rav Hanina explains his objection. So granted, according to the opinion of Rav, the Baraisa supports him, as Rav maintains that the meaning of this expression is uncertain. From now and after, 30 days, or from now and after I die, that creates uncertainty. So this is why we hold like Rav in this situation. Says Rav Hanina, according to the opinion of Shmuel as well, although he claims that the phrase is a condition rather than a retraction, he can explain as follows. In accordance with whose opinion is this Baraisa? It is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, who claim in that case that it is uncertain if she is divorced. And I, Shmuel, say my ruling in accordance with the opinion of Rebbe. But according to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, who said that this is a phrase that leaves room for additional betrothals, in a case where he uses this phrase with regard to a get, this should not be the law, as there is a principle: any get that leaves a remnant of the marital bond is not worth anything. Right? You can't say to a woman, this is your get on condition that you never drink wine again. Because now he has a power over her that would somehow, like if she ever drank wine again, then the get would not be a get. And in the meantime, she went and remarried. So no, that get is no good. A man could say, this is your get on condition that you don't drink wine for 30 days. Okay, she doesn't drink wine for 30 days, they're divorced. But it doesn't leave any remnant of the marital bond. Therefore, her late husband's brother, so if this bond is not fully severed, she is not divorced. Therefore, her late husband's brother should be allowed to enter into Yibum with her. Rava said, since a get serves to remove a wife from her husband, and death also serves to remove her and dissolve their marital ties, permitting the woman to remarry, one can say that whatever part is left over from that get is nevertheless completed by death, and therefore there is a complete act of severance. Abaye said to him, are the two comparable? Can these stages be viewed as completing one another? A get removes her not only from her husband's authority, but also from the authority of the Yavam, her brother-in-law, as a divorced woman does not perform Yibum. Whereas death brings her into the authority of the brother-in-law because it renders her obligated to him to perform either Yibum or Chalitza. Rather, Abaye said one must reject the above explanation and ask, what is the reason there for the concern about that get according to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan? It is not because the get is in any way valid. Rather, it is a rabbinic decree due to the case of one who says to his wife, this is hereby your get from today if I die. Everyone agrees that this is a get that goes into effect from now when he gives it to her if he dies later. Since one might confuse the two cases, the sages decreed that if one says, this is hereby your get from today and after my death, the get is considered valid to the extent that the woman does not enter into Yibum. That get has enough, pull, has enough power, as it were, to create the uncertainty. And that's why Yibum is off the table, but Chalitza is required. Just very quickly, now that we've said that this is a rabbinic decree and why we say it, it's interesting also reading this morning the first Torah portion of the Torah, the first portion of the Bible, right? After the creation of the world, we read about the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, right? So God says, of all the trees you may eat, but of the fruit of the tree, the tree of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you may not eat, right? So along comes the most cunning of all creatures, the serpent, who at that time could talk and walk. And he says to her, what did God say to you? And she said, well, we can eat of all the trees in the garden, but of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we may not eat it, and we may not touch it. We may not touch it. Did God say you may not touch it? No, God didn't say that. Now, it would be an appropriate fence around the Torah, which perhaps Adam or maybe Eve herself drew up. It was like the first rabbinic ordinance in a sense, to say, well, you don't eat it because if you do, you're going to die. So let's not even touch it. But God didn't say that. When Eve said to the serpent, God said, don't eat it and don't touch it. The serpent was able to say, this is a midrash, God said, don't touch it. And he pushed her into it and she touched it. She didn't die, right? So because she added on and didn't say, this is our safety measure, our fence around the Torah, but rather she attributed that law to God, the serpent was able to undermine her argument and say, well, you see, you touched it, you didn't die. You might as well just eat it, right? Why? The reason that God told you not to eat it is not that you're going to die. It's because God wants to keep it to himself, this knowledge of good and evil. And her Yetzer Hara, her evil inclination, said, oh, wow, well, it looks really good. Now he says I'm not going to die. And then I'm going to know stuff that I didn't know before. Ooh, that must be a good thing. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to convince my mate to go along with me. We've all been living in a completely different world ever since because of it. And that is why the sages are always so careful to distinguish halachos d'oraisa from halachos d'Rabbanan. The laws of the Torah are distinguished from the laws of the rabbis. The rabbis have the authority to pass laws which bind us, right? We have to live by those laws, but we have to know which laws were instituted as ordinances from the rabbis and which laws were either, written into the Torah by God, dictating to Moses, or some of the, d'oraisa laws were given to Moses at Sinai as part of the oral law, but they were given by God, right? There's a big distinction. And one of the distinctions, we always talk about that if it's a d'oraisa, a law that God gave in a case of doubt, we're stringent. And if it's a law, an ordinance of the rabbis to draw a fence around the Torah and protect us from coming to violate God's d'oraisa laws, in a case of uncertainty about a rabbinic ordinance, we're always lenient. The Gemara asks, but let us also issue a decree in a case where he said, this is hereby your get from today, if I die, that's a valid get, that she should perform chalitza due to its similarity to a get that includes the stipulation, this is hereby your get from today and after my death. They're saying, well, maybe in the case of a valid conditional get where he says, this is your get from today if I die, that's a valid get, right? So if he dies, she's divorced retroactively from the moment he gave it to her, in which case when he dies, she doesn't need to perform chalitza. But perhaps the sages should issue a decree just to protect people who make mistakes and say, well, in that case, you perform chalitza also, just, to cover the guys who think that they don't need to perform chalitza when they stated the conditional erroneously by saying, this is your get from today and if I die. See? And the Gemara answers, the sages do not require her to perform chalitza in that situation of a valid conditional get that retroactively creates divorce from when he gave it to her. Why? Because if you say that she performs chalitza, people will mistakenly think that the Yavam, the surviving brother, performed chalitza because he did not want to marry her. And if he had wanted to, she could have entered into levirate marriage. In fact, she's divorced and is forbidden to the Yavam, and a decree of this kind would mislead people in a different direction and could lead to other transgressions. So the Gemara asks here too, in the case of where he says, this is hereby your get from today and after my death. If you say that she performs chalitza, people will mistakenly say that she could have entered into yibum. And the Gemara answers, this concern is not important, as let her perform yibum, and there is no problem with that. The fact that she is treated as a divorcee and is forbidden to the brother-in-law is merely a concern of the sages who enacted a decree due to the similarity of the case where one says, this is hereby your get from today if I die, whereas it is in fact not a get, and it is permitted for her to enter into yibum. Remember, that get was not a good get. We're afraid that it might have some validity, and that's why we say she has to perform chalitza. But if they make a mistake and perform yibum, it's not so bad because it wasn't a valid get. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 1 here in chapter 3. Here's Mishnah number 2. With regard to one who says to a woman, you are hereby betrothed to me with this peruta, right? The minimum amount of money that you use symbolically to create betrothal, like a penny. But he says, you are hereby betrothed to me with this peruta on the condition that I will give you 200 dinars, a lot of money, but he doesn't have it handy, so he's going to give it to her later. If he says this, she is betrothed immediately, because he says, be betrothed to me with this peruta, and she accepts. Now, he says, I have to give you 200 dinars later, but they're betrothed now because he said, be betrothed to me with this peruta, and she accepts. However, that condition has to be fulfilled. She is betrothed immediately, and he shall give her the money. If he said to her that the betrothal is on the condition that I will give you a particular sum of money from now and until 30 days, if he gave the money to her within 30 days, she is betrothed, but if not, she is not betrothed. If he said to her that the betrothal is on the condition that I have 200 dinars, she is betrothed if he has this sum. If he said to her that the betrothal is on the condition that I will show you 200 dinars, she is betrothed and he shall show the money to her. And if he is a money changer and shows her money belonging to others on the money changer's table, she is not betrothed, as his statement means that he will show her his money. Show me your money, not show me the money. That's Mishnah number 2. Gemara. It was stated that the Amoraim, the rabbis of the Gemara, disagreed with regard to the text of this Mishnah. Rav Huna says that the text reads, and he shall give, i.e., it is a valid betrothal from the outset, right? The first clause of the Mishnah, which says, be betrothed to me with this peruta, on the condition that I will give you 200 dinars. And the Mishnah said she is betrothed immediately and he shall give her the money. So Rav Huna says that it reads, and he shall give, i.e., it is a valid betrothal from the outset and the man is obligated to give her the promised amount. Rav Yehuda says that the correct version of the Mishnah is when he gives, meaning that the betrothal takes effect only when he actually gives her the money. And the Gemara elaborates, Rav Huna says the phrase, and he shall give, indicates that this is a condition stipulated by the man, which means that the woman is immediately betrothed, and he merely proceeds to fulfill the condition. He's making the condition for himself, not telling her we're going to be betrothed if I give you 200 dinars, but be betrothed to me with this peruta, and parentheses, and if you say yes, then I am obligating myself to give you 200 dinars. But the betrothal already took effect. That's how Rav Huna reads it. Rav Yehuda says that the Mishnah reads when he gives, which indicates that when he will give her the money, it will become a betrothal, but for now at least, it is not a betrothal. So the Gemara asks, what is the difference between the explanations of Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda? Both agree that if he does not give her the money, she is not betrothed. Is that what they're saying? The Gemara answers the difference between them is in a case where she extended her hand and accepted betrothal from another man during the period between the initial betrothal and the delivery of the money. According to the opinion of Rav Huna, the betrothal of the second man is not a valid betrothal, as he maintains that when the first man gives her the money, the betrothal takes effect retroactively from the time of his earlier statement. According to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, the betrothal of the second man is a valid betrothal, as the betrothal of the first man does not take effect until after he actually gives her the money. Hold on a second. With regard, where'd the law come out? With regard to a man who betroths a woman with money, and he says to her, on the condition that I will give you 200 dinars from now until 30 days. If he gives her the money within 30 days, she is betrothed retroactively from the time he issued the statement. And if he does not give her the money, she is not betrothed. Okay, so I made a mistake there. Either way, the betrothal is a betrothal. The question is, can it be broken during the 30 days before he has paid by the arrival of a new suitor? Right? That is better. Sorry, I meant that. The Gemara asks, what is the difference between the explanation of both So according to the opinion of Rav Huna, the betrothal of the second man is not a valid betrothal, as he maintains that when the first man gives her the money, the betrothal takes effect retroactively from the time of his earlier statement. According to the opinion of Rav Yehuda, the betrothal of the second man is valid because the betrothal didn't take effect until the money was paid. There was no retroactive back to the moment when the guy gave her the peruta. Now, the Gemara comments, and we also learned a Mishna concerning bills of divorce like this case at Gittin 74a. With regard to one who says to a woman, this is your bill of divorce on the condition that you will give me 200 dinars, she is divorced and she shall give him 200 dinars. It was stated that the Amoraim disputed the correct version of this statement. Rav Huna says, and she shall give. Rav Yehuda says, when she gives. And the reasons are as stated above in the discussion about betrothal. Rav Huna says, and she shall give, as it is a condition, and therefore she proceeds to fulfill the condition. Rav Yehuda says, when she gives, as when she will give the money to him, it will be a valid bill of divorce. But now, in any event, it is not a valid bill of divorce. Now we're on 60b. What is the difference between the explanations of Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda? Even Rav Huna agrees that she cannot marry someone else until she gives him the money. Until that point, the get does not come into effect and she remains married to the first man. So the Gemara answers the difference between them is in a case where the get was torn or lost after she received it, but before she gave him the money. According to the opinion of Rav Huna, it is a valid get, as the divorce takes effect from the moment he gives her the document. According to the opinion of Rav Yehuda, it is not a valid get, as he maintains that the get goes into effect only later, which is impossible after it is torn or lost. And so the Gemara comments, and it is necessary to state both disputes in the case of divorce and in the case of betrothal, because neither law could be derived from the other. As had it taught us only the case that the two sages disagree with regard to betrothal, one might have said that Rav Huna says that the betrothal takes effect immediately, despite the fact that he must still give her the money, is because betrothal comes to draw her near to him. Therefore, it is likely that he meant for the betrothal to take immediate effect. But with regard to divorce, when he comes to distance her, you might say that Rav Huna concedes to Rav Yehuda that the divorce comes into effect only from the moment she gives him the money. And conversely, if the dispute had been stated only with regard to this case concerning a get, one might have claimed that Rav Huna says that the get comes into immediate effect only in this situation because the husband is not ashamed to demand the money from her whenever he wants, and therefore he divorces her immediately. But here, concerning a betrothal, when she is ashamed to claim the money from him, you might say that Rav Huna concedes to Rav Yehuda that the woman does not accept the betrothal until she actually receives the money. It is therefore necessary for the dispute to be stated in both cases. And the Gemara raises an objection to the opinion of Rav Yehuda from a Baraisa to Sefta Gittin 5.5. If one says to his wife, this is your get on the condition that you will give me 200 dinars, even if the get was torn or lost, she is divorced. But she may not marry another man until she gives him the money. So this ruling apparently accords with Rav Huna's opinion that the get goes into immediate effect from the moment it is given. And it is further taught in a Baraisa with regard to a man who said to his wife, this is your get on the condition that you will give me 200 dinars, and he died childless. If she gave him the money, she is not bound by a levirate bond to the brother-in-law, as she is already divorced. But if she did not give the money, she is bound by a levirate bond to the Yavam. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, if she did not give it to her husband during his lifetime, she may give the money to her late husband's brother, or to his father, or to one of the relatives who inherit from him, And by doing so, she fulfills the condition and is retroactively divorced, and therefore has no yibum, no levirate bond to the yavam, the surviving brother-in-law. The Gemara now analyzes this ruling. The Tanaim, the rabbis of the Mishna, disagree only with regard to the following. One sage, the first Tana, holds that by the phrase, on the condition that you will give me, he meant to me specifically, but not to my heirs. Consequently, if she does not give the money to him, she is not divorced, as she cannot fulfill the condition by giving the money to his heirs. And the other sage, Rabban Shimon Gamliel, holds that the husband meant even to my heirs. In any event, everyone agrees that it is a condition, and the divorce takes effect from the moment the bill of divorce is given, right? It's retroactively valid from when it was given, so long as the condition is later fulfilled. And this is apparently a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Rav Yehuda in the dispute we've been discussing that he had with Rav Huna. So the Gemara answers, Rav Yehuda could say to you, in accordance with whose opinion is this Baraisa? It is the opinion of Rebbe. As Rav Huna says, that Rebbe says, anyone who states a condition, employing the language on the condition, that is like one who states that the agreement will take effect retroactively from now, when we're agreeing to the condition, even though the condition is fulfilled only later on. Rebbe maintains that the phrase, on the condition that, indicates that an action should take effect now, provided that a certain condition is fulfilled later, right? In other words, if he says, this is your get on condition that you give me 200 dinars, and she gives it 200 dinars a month from now, the get is valid retroactively to right now when they agree to the condition, or when he gives her the condition, when he gives her the get on that condition, as if he had said, this is your get from now on condition that you will give me 200 dinars. And he could set a time limit within 30 days or not, on the condition that you will give me 200 dinars. So if he doesn't have to say from now, if he's giving this condition. That's the opinion of Rebbe. The rabbis say it only is retroactively from now if he says from now. So Rav Yehuda would conclude by adding, and I spoke in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, not with the opinion of Rebbe. So the Gemara analyzes the matter itself. Rav Huna says that Rebbe says that anyone who states a condition employing the language on the condition is like one who states that the agreement will take effect retroactively from now, even though the condition is fulfilled later. Rabbi Zera said when we were in Babylonia, right, in the Jewish community in Bavel, learning there, we would say, with regard to that which Rav Huna says, that Rebbe says, anyone who states a condition employing the language on the condition is like one who states that the agreement will take effect retroactively from now. That is Rebbe's opinion, but the rabbis, the majority, disagree with him. When I ascended to there, meaning to Eretz Yisrael from Babylonia, I found Rabbi Asi sitting and saying the following ruling in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. All concede that with regard to one who says to his wife on the condition, he is like one who states that the divorce will take effect retroactively from now. I thought that was Rebbe's minority opinion, and now Rabbi Asi is saying that Rabbi Yochanan says that all concede, meaning it became the majority opinion. They disagreed only with regard to one who says to his wife, from today and after my death, that's the uncertain formulation, whether he is considered to have added a condition or to have retracted his initial statement. And it is taught in a Baraisa that if one says to his wife, this is your get from today and after my death, it is uncertain whether it is a valid get or whether it is not a valid get. This is the statement of the rabbis. The rabbis are uncertain whether he has changed his mind from his initial intention of giving the document that day and now wishes to give her a get after his death, which is not effective, or whether he was merely adding a condition that the get should take effect from today only when he dies. But he didn't say that, so it was uncertain. Conversely, Rebbe says a document like this is a valid get. And the Gemara asks, and according to the opinion of Rav Yehuda, who says that the Tanaim also disagree with regard to one who says to his wife on the condition, instead of disagreeing with regard to the case where one says to his wife from today and after my death, let them disagree with regard to a case where the husband used the expression on the condition. Right? Does that mean from now or not? And the Gemara answers, Rav Yehuda maintains that they disagree over both cases. And the Baraisa taught the dispute in this manner to convey to you the far-reaching nature of the opinion of Rebbe, who maintains that even if the husband says to his wife, from today and after my death, this is also a valid get. And the Gemara asks, and let them disagree with regard to a husband who says to his wife on the condition, to convey to you the far-reaching nature of the opinion of the rabbis, who hold that it is not a valid get, even in that case. And the Gemara answers, it is preferable to emphasize the power of leniency. It is always better to formulate a dispute in a manner that emphasizes the extent of the lenient opinion. Why? Because it's easy to be stringent. It's easy for a rabbi to say, I'm not sure, don't do it. A rabbi has to have tremendous knowledge of the subject and certainty about what he's saying to issue a lenient opinion, because people will rely on the lenient opinion and go and do an action that if the guy's wrong, they're going to commit a transgression. That's why it's much easier for them to say no. And it takes a very powerful, well-versed, knowledgeable rabbi to issue a lenient opinion. And that's why in debates like this, we are going to formulate cases to sort of stress the power of the lenient opinion, because it was such a big deal for the rabbi to make a lenient opinion. The Mishna teaches with regard to one who says to a woman, you are hereby betrothed to me. We're going back to our Mishnah, right? Mishnah number 2 here in chapter 3. With regard to one who says to a woman, you are hereby betrothed to me on the condition that I will give you a particular sum of money from now and until 30 days have elapsed. If he gives her the money within the allotted time, she is betrothed. And the Gemara questions the need for this ruling. This is obvious. The Gemara explains, this ruling is necessary, lest you say that the specified time period is not a proper condition. And he said so only to motivate himself to prove the sincerity of his intentions. The Mishnah therefore teaches us that the time period is an essential part of his condition, and if he fails to give her the money within this period, the betrothal is void. Don't add a time condition just to motivate yourself to a legal agreement, because the time period becomes part of the legal agreement. The Mishnah further teaches that if he says to her, you are hereby betrothed to me on the condition that I have 200 dinars. If he in fact possesses the specified amount, she is betrothed. But if he does not, she is not betrothed. And the Gemara asks, and let us be concerned that perhaps he has the sum, although he fails to show it to her. How can his betrothal be nullified if there is no conclusive evidence that he does not have the money? And furthermore, it is taught in the Baraisa that we are concerned that perhaps he has the money. Right? In other words, he says to her, you are betrothed to me on the condition that I have this money. And then later he's like, you know what? I don't want to marry her. So he doesn't show her the money. But he has the money. So legally, they are betrothed. He just tried to weasel out of it. So what are we going to do about that? That's what we're discussing in this very last paragraph, because I'm almost done. If you got questions or comments, please get them in now. The Gemara answers, it is not difficult, as this case in the Mishnah is referring to a definite betrothal, which is not established in this case, as he has failed to demonstrate that he has the funds. By contrast, that case in the Baraisa is referring to an uncertain betrothal. The betrothal cannot be entirely disregarded, as he might have the money after all. It might create a situation where we're not certain if she was betrothed, so before she can go marry someone else, she's going to need a get from this guy. And the Mishnah teaches that if a man says to her, you are hereby betrothed to me on the condition that I will show you 200 dinars, she is betrothed and he must show her the money. So what does that mean? That she becomes betrothed when he shows her the money, or she's betrothed from now when he shows her the money? A sage taught, Tosefta 3:6, this woman intended to see only his own money, not simply be shown 200 dinars. So with regard to the subsequent ruling of the Mishnah, and if he showed her the money on the table, she is not betrothed. Meaning if he just showed her 200 dinars, because he's a money changer and there's 200 dinars on his table, but they don't belong to him, so she is not betrothed. And the Gemara comments, this is obvious, as the woman wants to see his money before she marries him. And the Gemara explains, no, it is necessary to teach that even if he holds someone else's money as part of a joint business venture, nevertheless, as the money does not actually belong to him, he has failed to fulfill the condition. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 2. Tomorrow, God willing, we'll pick it up with Mishnah number 3 near the bottom of page 60b. Let's see if we've got any questions or comments on Kiddushin 60. Tom, if the woman accepts the second man, isn't that the end of the matter? Also, if they both have to give her a get, can she later marry one or the other? Right. The reason that if she accepts the second man, I'm not sure when you asked the question, because we discussed several different situations. But when the guy says to her, this is your get from now and in 30 days, that which is the ambiguous section, right? The ambiguous formulation, or let's say, this is your get from now if I give you money in 30 days, right? Then she can't accept that betrothal of the second man during, because once the first guy gives her the money in 30 days, it's retroactively effective. But it's in that uncertain case where he says, this is your get from now and in 30 days if I give you money. Ambiguous language, so it would seem that the second guy could come along and probably marry her, but because it was uncertain, that's why it doesn't work, and that's why they say you need a get from both of them. So now to your second question, can she marry either one of them? I think yes. Once she's divorced from both of them because of uncertainty, she's free, they're free. She was never married to either one. There was only betrothal, right? So you can marry if you're married to a woman, fully married, and then you divorce, as long as she doesn't, cohabit with someone else after you're divorced, and certainly not if she married someone else, you can remarry her. So in this case, she was never married to either one of them. She was only betrothed. It seems to me that, after that, after we do away with the uncertainty by getting a get from both of them, then she could go and marry one of them. And what's interesting is, well, if she's going to marry one of them, isn't it enough to get the get from the other? But it sounds like she has to get a get from both of them, and then she has to get a get from both of them before she can go marry a third party. I think it's an interesting question. If she's going to just go ahead and marry one of them, does she absolutely need a get from him first before she goes and marries him? I'm not sure. That's what I've got for us tonight. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, Sunday, at the regular time, 6 p.m.